Well, welcome back to the Clueless Catholic Podcast. And today I thought we would do something a little different. And we're going to talk a little bit about adoration and our experience yesterday. We went to adoration yesterday. And then we also stayed for Stations of the Cross. So I thought we would just have a little bit of a discussion today and and see how it goes. If this airs, then it went well. If it doesn't air,
You'll never know.
then you'll never know. So I think it was last week that there was an announcement at church saying, to sign up for adoration. We have First Friday adoration at our church. And I had asked Michael if he wanted to go, and he's like, sure. So I planned it to start or to get there an hour before Stations of the Cross. So that way we could stay for that. So then they had like 30-minute time slots, but I decided to do an hour. And Michael said he was okay with that, which I was kind of surprised, but you did. So
Why?
why? Well, first of all, he just
First, there's a list.
no, it's just one thing. You just got you're still recovering from surgery. It's been 5 weeks now.
Yeah.
And major surgery, and it's not been very comfortable for him to sit for long periods of time. So I was a little concerned that he wouldn't want to stay that long. That's all. Nothing big. So anyway, I had a lovely time at adoration yesterday, and I don't know if you had the same experience. I didn't ask you because I wanted to ask you today when we recorded this. So that way I got your genuine off the cuff feelings out there. So you have a minute to think about that. But I wanted to share with you what my experience was a little bit. And we'll kind of go from there. So I think initially when we first walked into the church and I saw the monstrance on the altar, immediately I felt his presence. And so I get these feelings, I shouldn't say a lot, but often when we go to places like shrines and things like that, I can feel the presence of our Lord. So I immediately felt that. And so we went up to the very first pew, which is not like us, but I wanted to be as close to Jesus as possible. And so that's why we went to the first pew, which might have been a mistake later. We'll talk about that. But we both knelt down, and I immediately started praying the rosary. And there was something a week or so ago that I saw on Facebook, something about the worry rosary. And it's basically where you pray about a worry of yours for each decade, and it kind of releases that to God. So I started doing that, and I just kept feeling his presence and over and over and over again. And then at one point it stopped. And I was like, hey, come back. I was like, where'd you go? Come back. And he did. He came back. But oftentimes after that, it would fade, and then I'd have to say, come back. And I was kind of just reflecting on that a little bit today, and how beautiful of a prayer that alone is. Come back. So anyway, I bought both of us, a little journal that we took with us. And I wasn't sure if Michael was going to use it or not, but I told him, I said, hey, just write whatever you want, or draw, or whatever. And I think I filled a lot of pages while I was sitting there. And you were probably like, what the heck are you doing? Did you know what I was doing?
Yeah, you were writing.
Yeah, but did you know what I was writing, I guess?
No, that's up to you.
Okay. I didn't know if you were peeking.
No.
Okay. But what I was initially writing were just some thoughts in my head of, some things that I'm feeling day to day. And I ended up, there's a chaplet that I love, which is called the Sacred Heart of Jesus Chaplet, but I couldn't remember the name of it at the time. And so I pulled up the Holy Wounds Chaplet. And so For both of these chaplets, though, I started writing the prayers in my book. And really, it was just to be more intentional of the prayer that I was saying, because I often get distracted when I'm praying. Do you get distracted when you pray?
Hmm?
See? Not even listen to me. So I started writing things down or the prayers down, and that just helped keep my focus, which helped me because you started bouncing your legs. And I was like, oh boy. And I was getting distracted by your legs just bouncing up and down. So anyway, so yeah, I just wrote down the chaplet prayers. And I think the reason why I brought up the Sacred Heart of Jesus chaplet is it is one that even if I'm not sitting in front of the monstrance, I could say this chaplet anywhere and I still feel his presence. And the beautiful part of this prayer is that the every bead on the rosary says, "Sweethearted Jesus, be my love." And I just kept repeating that over and over again because that's what you do when you're doing chapels. And it just, I don't know, it just anchored me in his arms, I guess, is the only way I can say it. And I was just looking at my notes here too, because sometimes I'd write down the feeling that I was feeling. And at one point, this is when you were bouncing your knees, because I'm like, Michael's legs are bouncing up and down. I'm trying to ignore it, but I'm trying to ignore it, but I'm focusing on you. And then I was like, oh, there you are. You're back. But then I was reminded of St. John Vianney, um, which actually is the name of the church that we go to. But I forget how this story goes, but some man came in while he was praying in front of the crucifix, and he asked, "What do you do while you're praying?" And he says, "I look at him, and he looks at me." And so that just kind of came up there as well. And I was like, "How true!" And what a blessing it is just to feel you here. So, anyway, that was my experience, and I'll get to a couple of other things in a minute. But I wanted you to kind of chime in and talk about if you had an experience, because it's okay if you don't.
Adoration is hard for me because after about 15 minutes of praying all over the place, I don't have much left to say. So actually, the thing from St. John Vianney, I remembered, and I spent a good 15 to 20 minutes of just looking at him and him looking at me. Um, and I've never been one that quote unquote feels the presence of Jesus, but the reality is that he's there. So like I don't feel your presence when you're sitting next to me. I know that you're there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I took it. Um, so then I got bored because when I pray, I'm all over the place. And I started listing out things that I was thankful for. And then I started listing things that we needed for the groceries. And then I started listing things that I wanted help with. I mean, I'm all over the place. Then I started wondering roundabouts. It's, you know,
About roundabouts?
yeah, don't ask.
Okay. Why do we have roundabouts in our city?
Um, but, and it's very hard for me to concentrate. And so I picked up Chat GPT and asked it, what are some prayers that I can say in adoration? And Chat GPT knows that I'm Catholic and gave me all the right answers. But I found one that was very interesting. And I've not studied Padre Pio a lot at all, but there's a prayer that it gave. And so I read through that one and I was like, that's very neat. But at the end of it, it says that he would just repeat a line over and over again, stay with me, Lord. Which is kind of the inverse of when I was all over the place and getting bored and ready to leave. I kept reminding myself that Jesus said to James and John and and Peter, that when they fell asleep in the garden, that, hey, couldn't you stay with me even an hour? And I'm like, I can do at least an hour. Um, but where Jesus was saying to me, stay with me for an hour, then I was repeating back to him, okay, but you stay with me. So that was kind of neat.
Yeah. And I don't know if you and I ever did adoration together before.
I don't think so. It's always been separate on our own time.
Hmm. So I think it was amazing to be with you. You're seeing, you're probably like, what in the heck is she scribbling about now? But at one point I kind of just leaned on you and put my head on his shoulder, and we just stayed in that moment for a while. And I thought that was precious. You probably like, get your head off my shoulder.
No.
But there was one fun thing I thought I would do during adoration. So I took the Bible with me, and I just open, you know, how you can open it up and you point to your eyes closed or whatever, you point to a passage. And I asked Michael, do you want to do it? He's like, no. So, but I did it, and I did it 4 times, 5 times maybe. And when I was reading these passages, I was like, what is this really is this really something that a message is trying to come to me, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so the first one was in the book of Sirach,
Mhm.
verse 17. And it goes, the premises of it is all about glory to God. But I happened to look to the left, because this was on the right side of the page. I happened to look on the left side of the page on chapter 16. And I was like, oh, and I pointed it out to Michael. And that passage says, it is better to die childless than to have ungodly children. And we both went, oh, we have some prodigals out there, if you will. I don't think everybody's family is perfect, but some of them are. We know some families that have all priests and nuns. So I don't know what those parents did right, but anyway, I read that and I was like, oh man, maybe that wasn't the message she wanted me to see, because it was 17. So glory to God. And then I opened it up again, and it was Ezekiel 40, verse 28. And this talks about the gateways to the inner courtyard and setting up rooms, preparing for sacrifices, burnt offerings, sin offerings, guilt offerings, rooms for priests, all those things that we kind of just left off of Exodus, talking about those. And I started reading Leviticus for the next um, series coming up soon. And that talks about burnt offerings, sin offerings, guilt offerings. And so I was like, oh, well, that's kind of interesting. And then I put it down, and then I opened it up again. And it was Matthew 20, verse 17. And this is where Jesus predicts his death. And I was like, how timely is that? It is Lent. I'm here in front of you. And that's what that passage is for. And then Psalm 78:32, which basically says, despite of this, the people kept sinning. Despite his wonders, they refused to trust him. So he ended their lives in failure, their years in terror. When God began killing them, they finally sought him. They repented and took God seriously. And I was like, oh, that's a heavy one. And I was like, boy, do we need that in this world today, right? But kind of going back, so I used ChatGPT this morning because I was like, okay, these are kind of random. I'm not sure how they all fit together. And ChatGPT was like, this is pretty cool. So I'm going to read you what ChatGPT gave me. Basically, in Sirach, God sees everything and knows the human heart. So for me being at adoration, God already saw my worries and I brought them to him, and he welcomed me by seeking him. I thought that was pretty neat. And then the Ezekiel one, Ezekiel is shown the gates of the temple. And adoration means entering God's dwelling place and entering into his presence. That was pretty cool. And then the Matthew, like I said, Jesus is walking to Jerusalem and going to his passion. And adoration is keeping Jesus company in his sacrifice. And then the psalm, where the people were struggling to believe even after seeing God's works, basically meant don't rely on feelings. Faith continues even when they fade. And then there was something that it kind of summed it up a little bit more too. And I've got a lot of things to read here, so bear with me. But I just thought this was neat. So the title of this little paragraph that ChatGPT gave me was "God gently removes the training wheels." And I was like, okay, let's go. And it said spiritual writers say that when prayer deepens, God sometimes removes the emotional feeling of his presence, not because he left, but because he wants the prayer to be, or the prayer to move from feeling God to loving God. And St. John the Cross described it as God weans the soul from sweetness so love becomes pure, meaning we stop prayer because it feels good and start praying because we love him. And so I was like, well, what other saints have had the same experience? And so it gave me St. Teresa of Avila. And she actually struggled with prayer. She said that she was distracted constantly. And she had said, prayer is nothing else than being on terms of friendship with God. And then St. Therese of Lisieux, she said, for me, prayer is often a struggle. Sometimes I feel nothing at all. So I think you can probably relate to both of them. And then it was just like, it just kept repeating because I just kept saying, come back. Every time I felt that weight leave, I was like, come back. And it says that simple prayer of come back may be one of the most beautiful moments in prayer we can say. So sometimes in prayer, we feel God very strongly, sometimes not at all. The most important thing is not the feeling, it's staying, because every time we return our attention to God, even after distractions, that return itself becomes prayer. So there you go. That was my summary. And then I took it forward today. I just kept thinking about that. I just had a really good experience. So the fun part was at 7 o'clock is when Stations of the Cross started. And we saw our priest get ready. And he came out there. Like, I don't know. For me, it's like we're ready to do a mass or a service or something, and I hear the bell. Usually we hear a bell and we know what to do, right? We didn't hear any of that. And so Father just came out and he knelt in front of the monstrance. And I was like, okay, maybe he's praying for a little bit before Stations of the Cross. And I didn't realize that everybody else behind us went to kneel.
This is why you don't sit in the front row if you don't know what to do.
So it took me a minute. And Michael and I think looked at each other, we're like, okay, we should probably kneel, which is the right thing to do. But we were there for an hour and you can sit down. You don't have to kneel the whole time. But if you can kneel the whole time, that is great. So anyway, then we started Stations of the Cross and um, we had a little booklet guide, which I really appreciated because it's been a few years since I've been physically to Stations of the Cross. Like I'll listen to it on YouTube or whatever. But when was the last time that you went? Or did you ever, have you ever?
70.
Oh, that was a long time ago then. So I was thankful for this book to kind of guide us, but to when to genuflect and what to say and to read along with the prayers. So that was good, and singing the little chants and before each station. But I think it was the 12th station where Jesus dies, or the
Yeah,
13th. I can't remember.
11th.
Or the 11th. Okay, whatever station that is. Like we genuflected, and I fixed my eyes on Father because he will genuflect and come back up, right? But this time he stayed down. So I stayed down and Michael stayed down and a lot of us stayed down. And there were some people that popped up and I was like, see, we're not the only ones that are clueless. So I just, maybe we're not, it's not clueless. Don't get me wrong. It's just, we all don't know because there was nothing in the book to say what you're supposed to do. So did you know what to do?
I did on that one.
Oh,
Just
okay.
because I remember it from it, the only Stations of the Cross I've ever liked was the one at St. Maria Goretti where our youth group did the live straight stations.
Yeah.
Because that's it keeps my interest. But I remember on that one, it may have been the 12th. 11th, he was nailed. 12th, he dies. Yeah, so it was the 12th. That you stay down for that one.
Yeah. Well, every year I get the day off every year from our company, but you don't.
No.
So I have a what do you call it? Tradition where I go to a church downtown to go to confession. They're the only church that I know of anyway in our area that does confession on Good Friday. And then after that, I will come back up to Our Lady of Grace to go to the live stations. And they usually do it outside, is where they start, and then they take it inside. And man, it is powerful. The live stations is very powerful. And the kids do just an amazing job at that. So that's my tradition. Unfortunately, I wish you could go with me those days, but somebody has to work. Somebody has to make the money around here. But anyway, so yeah, I just wanted to pop on here and tell you about our experience and thought maybe it might relate to some of you. And we're not perfect. We don't have to be perfect at adoration. We don't have to be perfect at Stations of the Cross. We just got to be there. I think that's the takeaway of the whole thing.
Yeah, and feel free to share your own experiences in the comments.
Absolutely. Anything else you wanted to share?
No.
No? All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. God bless.